Chris Bombardier is a person with hemophilia B. He's a patient advocate and he's an accomplished mountaineer, best known for becoming the first person with hemophilia to summit Mount Everest and all 7 summits. Throughout his professional and personal journey, Chris has navigated high stakes decisions in both healthcare and life, making him a thoughtful voice on how patients can gather information, weigh options, and partner with their care teams during a transformative era in hemophilia care. Chris, it is good to see you, sir. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm excited to be here.
It has been a little while, so let's start there. Bring us up to speed. What have you been up to since leaving Save One Life? And how has this new chapter influenced the way that you're thinking about advocacy, healthcare, and all things bleeding disorders these days?
So it's been a interesting journey, interesting few, I guess, couple years now since I left Save One Life. I actually took a few months off initially after leaving Save One Life to kind of just figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, and ended up working for a pharmaceutical company, getting to do some work with different patient communities in the rare disease space, which has been really neat. It's been fun to connect with patients that are going through very different physical challenges and different symptoms, but having still that similarity regarding the other challenges that people with rare disease face, navigating insurance, the psychosocial challenges that it presents, how it impacts every facet of your life. So it's been really interesting to connect with those communities, learn a lot about them, but also just make some really cool connections, like I got to make in the bleeding disorder community over so many years. It's like fun to like make similar connections in different spaces. So that's what I've been up to.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure it's refreshing in some ways to be working within competencies and skills that you have and areas that you're interested in, like patient advocacy, but to be doing it in different communities. I imagine that there's a refreshing quality to that after being so steeped in bleeding disorders for so long.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And something that I'm really thankful for is all the experience I've had in the bleeding disorder community, because I've gotten to bring some ideas that I've seen work really well in our community, in our bleeding disorder community space, and like bring it to these communities. And that's been really fun. I do think our bleeding disorder community does things really well in a lot of different spaces, and to help a different community experience some of that and hopefully build more of those close, tight knit connections between each other. Yeah, that's been really special.
So, Chris, bringing it back to the bleeding disorders community and even more specifically to the hemophilia B community, this conversation is one of a few that we're having here on BloodStream this summer, putting a bit more spotlight in particular on hemophilia B as the community is going through what might be the most dynamic period in its history. There are more treatment options, more strategies, more decisions to consider than ever before. And that's exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. And so, my question to you is, as someone who has spent much of your life evaluating risk, gathering information, and making consequential decisions, how are you personally processing this moment in hemophilia B care?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, to say the least, in this hemophilia B space. I got asked a very similar question recently about treatment and like assessing risk. And I go back to like my climbing days, and something that I think would surprise people is I don't necessarily consider what I did with climbing that risky, because I felt like I took all the steps to prepare and think about the challenge and understand what I'm going into. And you do everything you can to like mitigate risk. And so I think that's been something that I've brought to also my treatment decisions and how I evaluate different treatment frameworks in the hemophilia community. I look at all of the information about each product, look at the safety profiles, look at the potential side effects, risks, challenges. And I think it's just a very similar thing of like, how do you mitigate risk? Is it worth it? Like, where's that balance? And just trying to discover that balance and evaluating all these very products that look like work in vastly different ways. It's a little bit more challenging. It's not as straightforward as it used to be. But I think it's a great avenue to talk to your doctors about like what they do and how they work, and like better understanding your own body. But it is complicated. And They're not like decisions to take lightly because they're consequential. And so you have to take that pause, reflect, and then moving forward, is it safe? Is it the risk worth it for me? And making that decision on your own, I think, is super, super important.
Speaking of making consequential decisions, Chris, I want to take a moment here to remind listeners about Zebra for Care. Because if you're living with hemophilia B and you want to better understand whether you may be a candidate for gene therapy, Zebra for Care offers a free online self assessment designed to help you prepare for that conversation. How about that? After completing the 5-minute assessment, that's not a long time, you'll receive a personalized report that you can bring to your next visit to your hemophilia treatment center to help make that conversation even more productive. Zebra for Care can also connect you with a team of board certified hematologists for a convenient online consultation to discuss your assessment results and get a second opinion. As Chris knows, for me personally, getting a second opinion was an important part of making a major healthcare decision I had related to ankle surgeries that I needed after years of damage as a result of my hemophilic bleeding. The second opinion is what gave me the confidence that I understood my options and was making the best decision for me. And that's what Zebra for Care is all about, helping people with hemophilia B feel more informed, more prepared, and more confident as they navigate important treatment decisions. So to learn more or complete your free self-assessment, visit hematology.zebraforcare.com. Again, that's hematology.zebraforcare.com, or simply follow the link in this episode's show notes. So, Chris, I just mentioned my ankle surgeries. I'm curious, is there a time where you were facing a significant healthcare decision? And if so, what tools, resources, information, conversations helped you gain clarity and confidence to move forward?
Yeah, there's been a few times in my life that I've made decisions to switch treatments in the hemophilia space. And I feel like all of those decisions were big and consequential. I think when I was younger, there wasn't those questions. It was like, here you go, this is what you got. But I would say the biggest one that I undertook was I joined a clinical trial many years ago for a new product. And something that was really interesting about that process is I think when you're starting a product that's already been approved, like it's like less formal discussions about side effects and like the unknown of what treatments could be like. But in that setting, like it has to be laid out and like really specified. And when you're reading all of those consent forms and stuff, it's pretty intimidating. And I think part of the reason that I decided to continue with that was really talking to my doctors about what all those things meant. And assessing that risk versus benefit and where kind of it landed on that spectrum for me. And it ended up being to the place where I felt like the benefit outweighed risk. But yeah, it was a long process. And I talked to my now wife, girlfriend at the time, about like what this meant, getting different opinions on how I was viewing it and like trying to process it out loud, I think was really critical. And now more recently, I've made another change in my treatment. And that conversation was more, I guess, in depth one with my healthcare team, that trying to understand, in this point in my life, is this a good choice? Is this how we're going to move forward? And I think it was with a different lens this time of I have a son now, and like, what are the potential risks, and like my risk tolerance is different. And so it took a lot longer to make a decision and really think about it because there's more things at play. So I think as you get older and evolve your decision making in your life, those thoughts about treatment options and all of those things kind of change and evolve and come into play. So it's just, yeah, important to keep that conversation and dialogue with your healthcare team, but also the people in your life that are impacted by your hemophilia or bleeding disorder as well, because it doesn't just impact one person in I think solely, it impacts the whole family.
But with respect to talking to your healthcare team in particular, Chris, shared decision making and this concept that patients and caregivers come in with their knowledge, their questions, their preparation, the HCP does the same, and a really robust dialogue occurs. That's the goal anyway. But I'm curious, how do you think about the balance between being an informed, engaged patient and relying on the expertise of your healthcare team? How do you process that tension?
Yeah, I think having a great relationship with your hematologist helps a lot. Having a comfortable dialogue with them is important. And I think it's important to know that if you don't feel like you have a comfortable relationship with your hematologist where you feel like you can raise challenges and raise concerns and that you're more being just told what to do, there's always options to get second opinions, like you mentioned earlier, and talking to other people. But regarding this last kind of transition to, for me, to a different treatment, it was interesting because it's something that I had read about, I was interested in. It wasn't really presented to me as an option, but it was something that I wanted to talk about. And so I came with some information. I asked a bunch of questions. And I think the great part of what my hematologist did was he was like, I don't know all of the answers to these things, but I'm going to go research on my own and come up with it. And then we had a follow-up conversation about it. And so it wasn't like I don't know, or I don't think it's right. It's like, let me talk, let me do some due diligence. Let me come up with information and come back to you. And we continue a conversation. And that really took months. It wasn't like a one appointment switch. It was a long process, but it was really important because I think the hematologist felt more comfortable too with the decision as we made it. And I think he gained more knowledge too on something that he had initially dismissed, but was like, all right, let's check it out. And so I think that was really cool. I don't think everybody has that relationship, but I think that's the goal, right? And I think just asking questions, you've read about something, you've heard about something, just ask the question and see where it goes. And if you don't feel like you're getting the answers, go ask somebody else. It doesn't hurt.
It doesn't
Might
hurt.
be scary, but it doesn't hurt.
May even help. May even help. All right, Chris, I respect we're coming up on our time. My last question for you today, for anybody who's listening that has hemophilia B or has a loved one with hemophilia B that's feeling both excited and overwhelmed by all the options that are available today, what's one thing you would encourage them to do before making their next big healthcare decision?
I think the biggest thing I would recommend for folks is not to feel rushed into making a decision. If you're stable and you're feeling okay on your product and doing well, there shouldn't be a feeling of needing to rush into a decision. It's important that you feel 100% comfortable, 100% like you understand what you're getting into before you make any decision. And to really think about like, where could this be beneficial in my life? Where could this help me get to somewhere that I wasn't before, whether that's like physically or it's like impacting your life in some other way? It's really important to kind of break down all of those pieces and just slow down, weigh those pros and cons before you make any decision. Because I think if you feel rushed into it, I think that can impact a lot of, pieces of just that experience, and feeling comfortable and confident in your health and your decision to take care of yourself, I think is like the most important thing. But I think you have to spend the time to do it as well. I think you have to, if you're interested in these new avenues, like it's going to take time to learn it, know what questions to ask, figure out which products have benefits that you're interested in, and if those are the benefits that you're looking for. So I think it's just taking your time, assessing, and not being afraid to also be like, no, that's not cool for me, and being cool with letting it go. So I think that's also really important.
Such great advice on that concept of taking your time. Such a good point. I'm glad you made it. I have also, someone said to me not long ago, and it hit me harder than I'd like to admit, that a shared decision-making conversation isn't a one-time discussion. You earlier brought up bringing into the discussion loved ones, other people impacted by your bleeding disorder, not just talking to your healthcare provider. But it was helpful for me to be reminded it's not like I have one 10-minute conversation with my healthcare provider and that's it. At the end of that, we're either deciding if I'm on a new therapy and a new dosing strategy or not. That's not the case, as Chris's story just illustrated. So thanks for reminding us of that, Chris. And thanks for being here. It's so good to see you. I miss seeing you as often as I used to when you were actively working in the community. I will admit that.
I know I will be at BDC and like hopefully be around a little bit more. But yeah, I miss it too. I miss seeing the big bleeding disorder family. But yeah, it's good to be back. And thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'll look forward to seeing you at BDC. And a reminder to everybody out there, if you're affected by hemophilia B or interested in gene therapy, hematology.zebraforcare.com.